Thank you very much for the talk. So I have actually a two-part question that ties to this sort of seeming smart versus being smart piece that you both touched on that I think is so interesting. And because as you were talking, I started to think about, well, gosh, when I think about what I'm looking for in a computer, it's not so much that the computer's going to seem smart or be smart, but it helps me to be smarter or perhaps seem smarter. And I'm wondering about some of the trade-offs that come with that. So for example, I'm thinking about different statistical software packages that I have a choice of using in my work. And I'm sort of in the point-and-click camp. So I use, for anyone who uses SPSS and Amos and things like that, where you get to make your pretty pictures and just it does the syntax for you. Whereas my husband, for example, uses SAS and R and M+, and the ones where you have to do all of the programming. Those make me feel really dumb when I try to do them because I get so many error messages. So I'm just wondering if you can talk about that piece. And then tied with that is also the issue of how much the research looks at what people want over time. Because what I want as a new user is very different sometimes than what I want down the road. So I loved auto-formatting when it initially came out because look, it looks so pretty right away. Wasn't that great? Of course, now it drives me absolutely insane because I know how to do those things and it gets in the way of me actually implementing, which is a little bit tied to the smarter statistical software versus less smart statistical software. So I'm wondering if you can talk about the tension between those different pieces of time and, I guess, making the person feel smarter or not.
Right. So I'll talk first about the making the person be able to act smarter and therefore feel smarter, which is really this question of division of labor. And as you've pointed out, it may be different for different people. So that does take an analysis ahead of time of what people would be using the system for and their work process and their workflow. I'll just give you an example that we did about 10 years ago, which was to build a system to find references for people. So when you're writing a paper, you get to the point of having to put a citation in, and you may not know the tag that you had on that citation. So with the existing tools, you could even then go to Google and look for the reference, which means you stopped your writing, kind of have fun exploring the web for a while, and then come back to write. Or you could leave yourself some notes. Now, we might have, if we wanted to build a system to help somebody write a paper, we might have thought of it trying to finish sentences. But we didn't think that was a good thing to do because computers aren't smart enough to finish sentences. What we did, though, is realize that computers are very good at searching. So we built a system that let you put keywords in when you got to the citation. You could keep writing, and it would go search your bibliography files and search the web and search authors' names to find possible papers. And when you were really done writing, it would let you select, it would give you a selection and you could select from things and then it would format things. So that's a place where, by design, we figured out what computers could relieve you of, like a good assistant would do. And that's where we put the wedge in. Just to briefly get to your second question, what you want is a system that adapts over time and learns about what you know. That's could use some of the same techniques that are used for searching big data, but there are other subtleties to it.
So my approach again would be what would make you feel smarter, and one of the easiest is flattery. People are suckers, as a Cialdini quote, people are suckers for flattery. And so, for example, we work with spell checkers, and in the old days, for those of you who remember, instead of having this automatic spell checking, you would write your whole document, and it would go through and highlight a word and say, this word is wrong, et cetera. And so what we did was we created a kinder and gentler spell checker that identified your errors, but every now and then would highlight a word and go, you spelled that correctly. That's a really hard word to spell correctly. And then at random intervals, we would say, your spelling's improving. That's great. Whether it was is irrelevant. And so what happened? So first of all, people thought they were better spellers and liked spelling more and thought that was awesome. They also thought the system caught more errors and was smarter too. So you get the benefits of both. So flattery is incredibly effective and extremely uncommon in computer systems. Now, to the over time point, the problem with saying you're great every day is after a while people don't like it. But if you say you're great one day, you're fabulous the next, and find something different to praise every day, you can get away with it for 50 years of marriage. I mean, it's unbelievable how, as long as you can come up with new positive things to say. I have never heard someone, except in sort of thinking they should say, oh God, stop, please don't say something nice about me again. And that's a third point. when we showed people the 2 spell checkers, everyone said, oh my God, I don't want, insincere kindness. I want to hear the exact thing. But if you think about what happens in daily life, imagine if you deal with a colleague or a boss who is always absolutely sincere, never errs on the side of praising you. We call those bosses horrible. We don't call them great. So evolving these things is really valuable. The general rule of thumb is, if you tell people they're dumb, they're going to not only feel bad, but they're going to think they're dumb. They also don't like you very much, but they think they're dumb. So there's really a whole new view of interfaces that have to do much more with telling you you're doing great, you're doing well, everything's really good. That really serves the purpose of making people feel smarter and better. So that's part of it. So for example, when you make a mistake, it doesn't have to be labeled as a mistake. So when we work with children, we'll often say, like, that was great, but why don't you try it this way? So if systems do that, it turns out it's very, very effective, makes you feel smarter and better and all these other good things.
Thank you. I want to ask about your lexical choices here. And I may be asking something that is so obvious that I ask forgiveness before I even say it. Smart, I'm thinking historically in terms of technologies. Technologies used to be quiet, fast, clear. At what point did we begin to talk about literally a human attribute in conjunction with technology, and does that mean that all technologies now become, the target of an appraisal as to how smart they are or how smart they make us? And what happened to the evaluations that used to be very functional in our interactions with other technologies?
Well, there's been a fascinating schism on this. So probably the most important trend in technology is this radical bifurcation between technologies that are smart and utterly invisible. So this camera does amazing things. It focuses, it does this, it finds things, it removes, I think, that I have no idea. I was never a good photographer, right? So one view is, one aspect of technology is we just keep hiding it and hiding it. It gets smarter and smarter and hidden. And same thing with speed. So I remember when at one point we were doing studies where technology has gotten so fast that when they came back with an answer, people felt like it didn't really think about it. So it's like if someone says, I love you, and you immediately say, I love you too, bad. You need that little pause. And we actually worked on the amount of time you need to pause before something you feel like they thought about it. Of course, too long a pause is also bad. I love you, and then 20 minutes later, I love you too. That's probably also on the wrong side. So think about the time granularity is hugely important. So you're right. One of the things that was, there are some technologies that have gotten so fast, we don't even know they exist. The other part is we want technologies to be what I'd call contemplative, to really, quote, think like we do, think deeply, etc. And that's the other part. So I think what you're thinking about, which is very important, is our definition of smart used to be really fast, really quick. In fact, so smart you couldn't see it working. And somehow in the last, I'd say 10 to 15 years, we've had a change where now smart means deep and thoughtful contemplation. Ironically, at the same time, I think socially we're seeing the opposite. And socially, people want really fast answers from other people. They want quick. Speed is being valued over depth. So I think that's really what's going on. It's very complicated.
Yeah, I would guess it was maybe the last 10 years, but
yeah,
10 or 15 years. I think speed had something to do with it. I think the enormous increase in the use of computers for communicating with people and finding things and so on. It's actually it was a compliment to Bethany's question. They started to do things that helped you feel smarter.
Yes, that's really a fascinating presentation. I want to thank you both for that. I know it's a crosstalk, but I'd like to ask you to look forward. The science of human-computer interaction mostly evolved in an era where it was me and my machine, one person with a computer on their desk, and then there's the question of how do we make that machine smarter, how do we make that person smarter in dealing with the machine. But let's look forward, look ahead, and say in 10 years, or maybe even 20, that just doesn't happen anymore, and that instead hundreds of millions of people interact with server farms composed of hundreds of thousands of core processors. And so now the question is, how do networks of people become smarter, and how do networks of machines become smarter, and how do networks of people mediated by machines become smarter? And as a case, maybe to launch off from in your answer, to think about the smartness or lack thereof of Wikipedia compared to a traditional encyclopedia written by experts as a kind of maybe as a test case for what the future might hold in terms of how we harness the intelligence of networks rather than individuals in the old dyadic sense of human-computer interaction.
So I'll just start by saying that for at least 10 years, I've been saying that that old dyadic model is gone. So I don't think it exists now. We use computers that are networked together, and even if there are systems within a single physical computer system, they're really separate software systems that need to interact with one another and do so better or not. And the canonical use of computing is really for some kind of group work. It may not be on the scale of tens of thousands of people, but they're computers in hospitals are used by teams of nurses and doctors. Computers in education are used by teams of faculty members and students. So that's already there. I mean, that's different from asking the question of how that then facilitates group work, and group work on a massive scale across a geography that's different. In any of those cases, though, in some sense, and that's part of what I try to work on, any computer system that's a piece of this, you would like to interact with a larger group in a way in which it's helping them get their work done, not needing direct instructions about what to do and how to do it. So I use the contrast between asking a kid to set the table and having to tell the kid to pick up a fork and go in the dining room and put it down and go back and pick up a spoon and put it down. I think where the servers exist is irrelevant to what the systems do. You know, that's a question of who's going to pay the money to maintain them. The cloud isn't really, I hate to say it, it's not a new thing. It's just somebody else is running the computers for you, and it's a nice word, but it's not a new idea.
I think I take a very different view of this. I agree with much what Barbara said, but I think what may actually happen is we're going to end up with a model closer to, you will have a technology that's your best friend or your wingman is the model I like best, where as I think about this phone, I think, what could this phone be doing for me that it doesn't, or even if it's not a phone? The answer is it's with me all the time. So if I really, really trust it, if we're really my closest friend, I would love it to listen to all my conversations, keep track of everything, you know, check stuff. I meet somebody, I have terrible name memory, and it would just go, psst, you know, whisper to me, that's Fred. And I go, hi, Fred. Or another example we've actually worked on is called Project Cyrano, where if I'm asking, we use the dating context because of the college students, where I want to ask someone out on a date, and the system determines that my voice, this guy here determines I sound too nervous, it alters my voice to sound more confident. And eventually it says, you know, that wasn't suave enough, let me take over here. And in my voice produces a better version of what I should have said. There's and it has access, of course, much faster, better, quicker access to the world, to information about the person. It could say, hey, I just checked, the person likes skiing, you know, why don't you mention that? And I say, I don't know how to ski. It goes, I'll cover you, don't worry. You know, and this idea of really that I sort of believe that humans in many ways, maybe it's, you know, wrong, that we're actually not built to coordinate in large social groups and work with large groups of people. We had to. And boy, if there were just one dude who could help navigate all my interactions with individuals, with groups, check out all the information, boy, that'd make my life easier. So it's sort of a different view, but sort of having my own guy who's on my side totally, who knows everything and is there for me. But I think that's a pretty attractive model.